Okay, so have you ever looked at the global economy and just thought, why is everything so incredibly backward? I mean, why do countries sitting on massive natural resources sometimes go completely broke, while countries with almost nothing just thrive? Or why does a government confidently plan to tax its wealthiest residents to raise millions, only to end up losing millions instead? It feels like nothing makes sense, right? But stick with me, because by the end of this explainer, we're going to explore the hidden machinery behind all of this and look at how core economic principles attempt to explain these totally wild mysteries. Welcome to the explainer. Think of today's session as literally a cheat code for understanding reality. We're pulling directly from the core insights of Thomas Sowell's famous book, Basic Economics. We are going to take the complicated, honestly kind of intimidating world of economics and simplify it into a set of highly focused visual concepts. We're basically handing you a new pair of glasses, and once you put them on, you simply can't unsee how the world actually works. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be covering 1. The illusion of intentions, 2. The reality of trade-offs, 3. Prices, signals, and shortages, 4. Profits, losses, and wages, and finally, 5. Why trade always wins. Let's dive right in. Section 1. The illusion of intentions. To really get this, let's take a quick trip back to the year 2008. The state of Maryland was facing a serious problem. They desperately needed money. So, state lawmakers came up with what seemed like a very straightforward, perfectly logical idea. Let's just place a heavier tax on our richest residents. They crunched the numbers. At the time, Maryland had roughly 8,000 millionaires. Politicians figured, hey, if we simply raise the tax rate on this specific group, we're going to collect exactly $106 million in new revenue every single year. Boom, problem solved, right? They set the policy in motion, fully intending to fund the state's needs. Well, here is where human intention slams into economic reality. Year 1? Sure, it went according to plan. But by year 2, someone decided to count the millionaires again, and the numbers revealed a totally different story. There were only 6,000 left. In just a short time, literally 2,000 millionaires had just vanished. Actually, scratch that. They didn't magically disappear. They just packed up and moved somewhere else. The source material hits on an absolutely crucial point here. People respond to rewards, not intentions. Maryland totally intended to raise $106 million, but what they actually did was mathematically reward millionaires for leaving the state. And when those millionaires left, they took their businesses, their restaurants, and their jobs with them. So instead of gaining $106 million, Maryland actually lost $257 million in total tax revenue. According to Sowell's economic lens, intentions absolutely do not matter. The only thing that matters is what behavior you are rewarding. All right, Section 2. The reality of trade-offs. Let's zoom in from state governments right down to the micro level of your own wallet. The framework here dictates that every single choice has a cost, which brilliantly illustrates the concept of opportunity cost. Imagine you go out and buy a gorgeous leather seat BMW for $50,000. You feel incredibly successful. But what is the actual cost of that car? It is not $50,000. It's whatever you had to give up to get it. What if instead you bought a totally reliable Toyota for $20,000 and invested the remaining $30,000? If you invested that $30,000 over 30 years, compounding interest could turn that money into almost $250,000. That is the true hidden cost of the luxury car. Every time you spend $1, an hour, or an ounce of energy, you aren't just spending it. You are spending what that resource could have grown into. I want you to really let this sink in. Economics isn't about what you have, it's about what you do with what you have. Once you start seeing the world through this lens of trade-offs, it changes the whole shebang. The question to ask yourself is never, can I afford this? The real question is, what am I giving up to get this? Which brings us to Section 3, prices, signals, and shortages. Have you ever stopped to think about how billions of resources, from the coffee beans in Brazil to the fish in Norway, find their way to your local stores without it being a total disaster? There is no massive global government planning office coordinating all of this, so how does it happen? There's this amazing story from the Cold War. Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev visited Britain and was totally baffled by the abundance he saw in London. He asks Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, "How do you make sure people get food?" Her reply was so good. She just said, "I don't. Prices do." You see, prices aren't arbitrary numbers. They are basically high-speed messengers. When pizza becomes scarce, boom, prices go up, telling suppliers, hey, make more. When there's too much, prices drop, signaling, okay, slow down. But what happens when governments try to silence those messengers by forcing price controls? The text shows some pretty stark examples of economic cause and effect here. Like in Zimbabwe, during huge inflation, the government mandated artificially low food prices. The result? Farmers were losing money on every single sale, so they simply stopped selling. The shelves emptied out and people starved. On the flip side, look at India in the early 2000s. The government guaranteed an artificially high price for wheat to help farmers. And what happened? Farmers overproduced like crazy. 11 million tons of wheat just piled up in warehouses and rotted, while people elsewhere went hungry. Set the price too low, you get a shortage. Set it too high, you get a massive surplus of rotting goods. Either way, when you mess with the price signal, you break the system. Moving right along to Section 4, Profits, Losses, and Wages. The book argues that just like prices, profits and losses are also messengers. Profits say, yes, society wants this, do more of this. Losses are equally important. They shout, stop wasting resources, nobody wants this. And here's the kicker. Wages follow this exact same mathematical logic. Think of a simple lemonade stand analogy. Let's say you hire 2 friends. Maria is super fast, friendly, and helps you sell 10 extra cups an hour. She literally creates $10 of value, so you can pay her up to $10 and still break even. Then there's Jake. He's a bit slow, spills the lemonade, and only helps you sell 2 extra cups. He's creating $2 of value. Your wage is simply the price of the value you create. It's not about being mean or nice, it's strictly math.
So, let's put on our economic glasses and apply this to a real-world scenario. According to the source, what happens if a mandate is passed forcing you, the business owner, to pay a $15 minimum wage? Remember, Jake is only generating $2 of value, and even your star Maria is only generating $10 of value.
The author points out an unavoidable reality here. If an employer is forced to pay $15 for only $10 worth of actual value, the business literally bleeds $5 every hour that employee stands there. No business can survive that for long. So the impartial economic outcome, according to this framework, is that the business owner has to adapt. They cut hours, maybe close up shop entirely, or they replace the worker with a self-checkout machine. Bosses aren't paying for time, they are paying for results. If you force a loss, that job just disappears. Finally, Section 5. Why trade always wins. A lot of times, we hear trade talked about like it's some sort of zero-sum game, right? Like if one side wins, the other side has to lose. But economics shows us that this is completely backwards. Let's look at the brilliant logic of comparative advantage. Say you're a lawyer, and you charge $300 an hour, but you also happen to be fantastic at cleaning. Should you clean your own office? Economically speaking, absolutely not. You hire a cleaner for $20 an hour. You use that saved hour to do legal work. You make $300, pay the cleaner $20, and you net a clean $280 profit. Both of you win. And this exact same micrologic scales up to entire countries. Even if one country is better at producing both cars and shirts than another country, it still mathematically makes sense to focus on their biggest advantage, let's say cars, and trade for the shirts. Both countries end up with more cars and more shirts than if they tried to make everything in isolation. Trade actually creates value without having to manufacture a single extra item. It is cooperation where both sides win, which is exactly why economists across the entire political spectrum have championed free trade for over 200 years. So what is the big takeaway for your own life? I think it perfectly boils down to this quote. Every hour spent on your weakness is an hour stolen from your strength. Stop grinding away for hours on the things you are bad at just to save a few bucks. Trade for it. Pay someone else to do your admin work or your taxes, and spend your time doubling down on what you do best. You don't win by fixing what's broken. You win by focusing on your strengths. And that wraps up our explainer. Getting a grip on these basic laws of economics might not instantly make you a millionaire, but as you've seen today, it definitely makes you impossible to fool. You know the deal now. Intentions versus rewards, the power of price signals, and the math behind wages. So, as you head into your week and face your next big decision, I'm leaving you with one powerful question to ask yourself. What are you giving up to get this? Thanks for hanging out with us, and keep looking through that new lens.